Welcome to the Coaching Edge podcast with your co-hosts, Dr. Steve Jeffs and Erwin de Grave. Each episode, we bring you expert guests and transformative coaching insights. Let's dive in.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of the Coaching Ed podcast with your co-host, Dr. Steve Jeffs. I'm myself, Erwin de Grave, and today we have the pleasure to talk to Anne Gordon. Hello, Anne. How are you doing?
Hi, Erwin. Hi, Steve. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thank you, and welcome, Steve, of course, as well. So, Anne, we could try to introduce yourself, but you know yourself much better than we do. So, who is Anne? What does she do? How did she come into coaching? And what excites her?
Oh my gosh, we don't have enough time for that to answer that question, but I'll do my best. So, I grew up in the Pacific Northwest in Washington State. My father had a boat. We were right on the water. I spent most weekends and every summer vacation on the water observing the orca whales. And so that was kind of my first introduction as a kid to the world of dolphins and whales. And I studied biology in university, have a degree in animal behavior. I trained animals for movies and television for over 20 years. I worked as a zookeeper in Seattle. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold here.
No worries.
And then in the film business, it took me on a film to Panama, where it hired a local tribe of indigenous peoples as the actors on the tribe. So I got to hang out with them in their traditional villages. And as fate would have it, I ended up marrying one of them.
Oh.
Which we could spend hours on that whole conversation. However, as I was there, I realized, one, his tribe survived on tourism. So I started working, helping support the family and bringing tourists out to the village. And then I also realized that there was nobody in Panama doing whale watching. And it was one of the only places in the world where humpback whales come from both the northern and the southern hemisphere to breed and give birth. So I, this blonde, blue-eyed foreigner, created the industry of whale watching in that country. And as I was doing the whale watching and out on the water, on a daily basis, pardon the pun, I wanted to dive deeper into one, connection with the dolphins and whales, but also my clients. And I love bringing through the spiritual aspect of connecting with nature and with these highly conscious beings. They've been on this planet for 30 million years in their current form. And we've been here about 250,000 years in comparison. So for the new kids on the block, we have a lot to learn, and they're here to teach us. And part of what I do from my background is I'm an observer. So when I'm out on the water watching the behavior of the dolphins and whales, my brain turns it into a metaphor for how we humans can live. And obviously dolphins, when you see a dolphin, you can't help but smile. They bring us joy, they play. And as adults, we humans just don't play nearly enough. So basically my whole life now I don't just do day tours. I don't do that at all. I'm now back in the US, and I lead what I call my whale and dolphin wisdom retreats. And I take people all over the world to connect deeply with, sometimes even swimming with, wild dolphins and whales, and helping them develop a spiritual, deep connection with the dolphins and whales, most importantly with nature and with themselves. So that's what I'm all about in a nutshell.
That's fascinating. There's lots of questions that I've got. The first one that stands out for me, you said that you created the whale watching industry in basically a foreign country. There's a lot of us out there are kind of struggling day to day with a business, and you created an industry in a foreign country. What did you learn through that?
Oh my gosh. it was, I will say, it was an uphill battle, big time. Because anytime you're a foreigner and you're trying to teach something to the locals, there's automatic resistance. We're all that way. None of us like to be told what to do. And now I was very respectful. I wasn't trying to say, hey, you need to do this. But it was also an education process, because the reason nobody was doing whale watching is because nobody in Panama knew that we had whales. So I had to educate them that, like, some of the locals, I would say, hey, I do whale watching. And they're like, we have whales? Aren't they dangerous fish? I'm like, well, they're not dangerous and they're not fish. So it was not easy. And I'm like many entrepreneurs, especially in the coaching world. I never was that kid who had the lemonade stand at 6 years old and, well, I want to own my own business. I never wanted to own my own business. It's just that everything that I did along my career, nobody was doing it where I lived. So the only way for me, I'll be completely honest, it was a selfish motivation to start my business with the whale watching. It was like, I wanted to get out on the water as much as possible to be with the whales and the dolphins, but I could afford to charter a boat every single day. So why not start the tours and have people pay me to go out on the water every day? Right. But I also love talking to people. I love sharing. I love teaching. So it worked.
It's an interesting concept that you put on the table that many people forget. And certainly, if you love to do something, and certainly on a business level, how can I enjoy it where other people pay me to do it, and I make money out of it?
Yeah. Yeah. I have always said all along, if you look at all the life decisions I've made and career decisions, I've been told no so many times along the way, more than I've ever been told yes. But I've always followed my heart in making those decisions. And even though there have been some really tough times, as it's not been easy, but I have zero regrets.
So because there are a lot of people, or a certain group of people, that have difficulties to deal with a no. So
Yep.
how did you deal, or how do you deal with no's, and what could you give some tips to them to say, hey, if somebody says no, it does not matter?
Yeah, and I not only had no from peers and colleagues and university professors, but also from family, right? And that's hard. I get it. It's hard. I don't know what it is, because it's so innate in me that maybe I'm just stubborn, right? I'm going to do what I want to do. I know neither of you are American, but we here in the US are taught you can do anything you want. And if somebody says no, it's like, there's another way. There's got to be another way, which was really embarrassing to my Panamanian husband when somebody would say no to us, and I'd say, no, there's another way. We can make it happen. And he would like, no, just be quiet, accept it. But that's not in my nature to accept a no. But no, it's not easy, because you know that you are going to be disappointing people. I remember when I was hired at the zoo right out of college as a keeper. In fact, I was the first woman to work in the carnivore department, mainly because the big beer doors were these big, heavy guillotine doors that were really heavy, and they didn't think a woman was strong enough to deal with them. And I figured out a way again. But I remember after 3 years of working at the zoo, even though it was one of the top 10 zoos in the US, I was bored. I personally don't do routine very well. I had already in 3 years gone as high up the ladders I wanted to go. And so I made the decision to leave the zoo. And I remember my father saying, well, but you have retirement, and you have medical, and you have dental, and you have all the things. right? And I said, but I'm not happy. And my father, throughout his entire career, had always been searching for the job that made him happy. So he understood, right? But yeah, he was being responsible, trying to, you need to be responsible. But then when I said that, he was like, okay, I get it. So following my joy, like the dolphins, following my passion, following my heart, has kind of put those no's to the side,
Mm,
because I can follow all of their advice, but in fact, my mom, up until like in the last 5 years, finally stopped waiting for me to get a real job. And he says, well, you can always go work at McDonald's if you need to. I was like, yes, I could get another job. I could work for somebody else, but I guarantee I will get fired so fast because I'm not happy. And if I'm not happy, I'm not doing a good job, and they're
mm,
not going to like it. And she kind of could get that.
I love it. There's something about the non-traditional approaches, especially for those that have the courage to follow a passion. It's
Yeah.
a scary, and it's one of those things that a lot of people go through life trying to avoid looking in that direction. Because if you
Right.
look and you have some hope, then, as you said, you can't tolerate what's actually defined as normal for many people.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, yeah. So one of the things that I'm seeing emerging more and more in conversations around coaching is getting out of Zoom, getting out of meeting rooms, getting out of the office, connecting back into this broader thing around us all, nature. Um,
Yes.
walking by a river, whether that's, sitting under a tree, whether that's connecting with creatures, other creatures,
Yeah.
inhabitants of the planet. What what resistance do you see from people about connecting beyond our species?
Oh boy, that's a big one. And it's it's a great question. Thank you for asking. I think for me, what's interesting on my retreats is my retreats are swimming with dolphins, swimming with whales, connecting, right? And so most people come to them, sign up because that's a bucket list dream. It's an experience that they want.
Mhm.
They're not really signing up. It's not like a retreat to reconnect with yourself, right? That's not why they sign up. But that's what happens,
mm,
right? So there's powerful, life-changing transformations that happens on my retreats. But it's kind of like a subtlety on the back end that the
Positive side
whales
effect.
I know about it, but people just, hey, I just want to come swim with dolphins.
mm,
But the minute a dolphin comes, a foot away from their face and looks them directly in the eye, life changes. And so it's super powerful. But I think, getting back to your question about resistance, I think there's a fear amongst a lot of people, and I see it in my clients as well. And this is, again, pardon all the ocean puns, they just come up. But when you're in the presence of dolphins and whales and in nature, you are invited to dive deep within yourself. And when you do, people are afraid of what they will find. Because when you do, sometimes you come up with those emotions and those memories and the painful parts of your life. But we all know that if we don't face them, then they're just going to literally be hampering us our entire lives. But the momentary unpleasantness is what people are afraid of. But what I have experienced, I'll tell you a brief story of how I experienced this. And that is, I am no longer married to that beautiful Panamanian boy in the jungle. We're still friends. But when I realized that the marriage was ending, of course, there's all kinds of emotions that come up. around that. And the dolphins had already taught me about when the emotions arise, just let them flow, dive deep, say yes, welcome them. And as unpleasant as it gets. So one day I was at home and I was working away on the computer and I just had this overwhelmed with sadness. And so I said, okay, instead of going, nope, I got appointments, I got to work, I got to get this done. I said, all right. And I shut down the computer. I cleared my schedule for 3 days. I said, bring it on. And I cried and I took naps and I screamed into the pillow and I journaled and I, did all the things. But what was amazing was on the afternoon of the second day, all of a sudden, that deep sadness was gone. And what came to replace it was this deep inner joy. And so what I learned is a day and a half of intense sadness, and then that intensity has never returned. And the joy that replaced it has been permanent. So well worth a day and a half of tears, as uncomfortable and painful as it was. But people are afraid of that day and a half. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to take a day and a half for everybody and whatever they got going on, but it really can be that quick.
That's why you have do the retreats, because there people come, they come swimming with dolphins and whales and bucket list done.
Yep.
But
Yep.
they're there, I imagine, for a few days. But what makes it so special, that connection with whales and dolphins, to get really that openness? Because when I was listening to, yeah, I can walk next to a river or I can walk in the forest. But what make a difference with dolphins and whales?
Yeah, it's a great question. And you're right. And dolphins and whales work for me and my audience. And maybe for others, it is a treat or walking next to a river. It's whatever works for you, right? I'm not saying whales and dolphins are the right thing for everybody. They are the right thing for me.
Yeah.
And for many people in my world. The thing about dolphins and whales is they are highly conscious beings. And they are highly intelligent beings. Their brains, body to brain ratio, are bigger than ours. They're more convoluted than ours. And they've been living on this planet for millions of years in harmony with the planet. We humans haven't got that figured out yet. Now, let me share a couple of lessons that they have taught me, and it might explain a little bit. One is when there is a storm out in the ocean, the waves get rough. What do we humans do when life gets tough? Avoid, get away, ignore, right? Deflect. But I have personally witnessed this over and over again on the ocean. The dolphins, the whales, they start playing. They will literally use the force of those big waves to launch them higher into the sky and those big waves and have fun with it. So they don't resist the challenge. They literally go with the flow of the challenge to carry them forward. Right? So obviously you can see what a metaphor that is for how we can use, how can we use the force of a challenge to carry us forward, or to even get a higher perspective of that challenge. So another great one that I love is that whales represent abundance. They're the largest creatures to have ever lived on Earth. They eat the smallest, and you never see a skinny whale. Right? But here's the thing. Not only are they the masters of abundance, but science has proven that when there are more whales in the ocean eating krill and plankton and small fish, there's not less krill, plankton, and fish. There's actually more. Because the presence of whales eating out of the food chain, what happens when you eat? Well, things go through your body and you poop. And when whales poop, what comes out is nutrients, nitrogen. And that's what the plankton needs. So more nitrogen in the water means more plankton, which means more krill, which means more fish. And so literally whales create their own abundance just by being whales. And the way I equate that is that's what entrepreneurs do. We're creating our own abundance just by doing what is nearest and dearest to our hearts.
I see that entrepreneurs as value creation is one of my favorite definitions.
Yeah.
I really love that metaphor because even in coaching, there's a lot of us as coaches with our clients that talk about concepts of abundance, and we help our clients get beyond their limiting beliefs and all of these other things that we help our clients step into their full selves. And yet when I see coaches connecting with coaches, I see a completely different energy. Often it's like, well, that's my client. That scarcity kind of comes in when they're so abundance as a coach and scarcity as a CEO. It's kind of an interesting dynamic, and I love this metaphor as a reminder of, well, if we're planting scarcity, that's what we're going to be getting. And complex systems work differently than the linear ones, and so you can have creatures that are eating more of something actually leading to more of that something that they're eating. It's not like taking donut off a plate.
No, and when you see humpback whales eating, they're not one whale here and one whale there and one whale there. They're like right next to each other, opening their mouths side by side. They're not, hey, this is my fish, go away. It's like, hey, let's work together to get more fish for all of us.
This is powerful. Working together to get more and enjoy more together. And I think it's really powerful, certainly what you said before, Steve, as well, that scarcity as a CEO, as a coach, it's making that switch to being, say, hey, let's find clients together. There's a way somehow that we can work together and get each one what we need and grow.
Yeah, and I think that's what joint ventures are, and affiliates, and like, hey, I'll promote somebody who I do a summit every year. I call Souls of the Sea, and who do I have speaking on it? Almost everybody also does whale and dolphin trips, but they have their own expertise that they bring to the table, right? I'm not worried. There's more than enough out there in the world, people who want to join me and work with me.
I love it. Did I also read that you help other people do retreats or have done?
I do. Yeah, I have done a lot of that. I really love it. It's super fun because I've been doing my retreats since 2007. So I've learned a few things along the way and about what works, what does not work. And so I love empowering coaches to lead their own retreats. And it doesn't have to be a whale or dolphin retreat. That's my flavor of retreat. What I've learned applies to whether it's a yoga retreat, a writing retreat, a couples retreat, a corporate retreat, whatever, it all works.
What is the right thing? What is the right thing? So if you do a retreat, and what would be do for you? It's dolphins and whales. How can people find out what would be their right fit for retreat, like you, whales and dolphins?
Yeah. So the first thing I tell everybody to do is, what is your goal for the retreat? What do you want to help people do? Right. And let's just say, for example, you want to help people, you're a nutrition coach, right? And you want to help people learn to eat healthy and to cook healthy. So you're doing a cooking retreat. Maybe you're going to go to Italy and, do a cooking retreat in Italy, but you wouldn't do a cooking retreat in Costa Rica. Costa Rica is an amazing place for retreats, but it's not a great place for cooking, right? They're not known for their cuisine. So if you want a mango salad, sure, perfect. But your plantains, but if you want great wine and, all the Italian things, you go to Italy. So my point is that once you have your goal, and everything else should align with that goal, right? So the location, the venue. For example, if you're doing a couples intimacy retreat, you're not going to go to a big all-inclusive resort that mainly has singles. You want, and maybe Costa Rica is now a better place because you want an off-the-grid place where it's intimate and quiet and people have space to connect with each other, right? So everything should align with that goal. And it doesn't have to be obvious. It needs to be something that you as the retreat leader understand. So for example, as I talked about the whales represent abundance, if you're doing an abundance mastery retreat, you could take everybody whale watching and they're just going to think, hey, this will be fun. But you as the retreat leader can then bring in that lesson about how whales create their own abundance. And so it's aligned, even though your people don't quite see it yet.
I think that's a really
But as
good,
long as,
I think it's a
right?
really good tip. One of the things that I appreciate about a well-created retreat, even if it's a workshop, is that
Yep.
it's a retreat, i.e. to withdraw from the other stuff
Yep.
that's going on. So there's an
Yep.
immersive context. And the other thing you're pointing to is that as facilitators, we don't have to bring all of the lessons.
Exactly.
Our job to not bring all of the lessons, but to create the space for them to emerge
Yep.
and also to allow space for them to emerge.
Exactly. I love that you said that, Steve. Thank you, because that is one of the biggest mistakes I see in new retreat leaders is trying to fill the space with all kinds of content. And they feel like they need to bring, all their PowerPoints. But PowerPoints, that's for Zoom. We don't need them on a retreat ever, right? This is about having aligned content, a few powerful lessons, but the experiences do the teaching. And then you build in free time because that's where the aha moments come through. That's whether it's through conversations with the other retreat participants, whether it's for going on a walk, whether it's for journaling, meditating on their own, whatever it is, that's when things are going to integrate and really anchor in.
Do you also then, when you look at retreats, when you like people in their free time, have a walk, have a think, do you recommend for retreat leaders to be available for one-on-one with those people when they say, hey, that just happens, or would you do that in a group so that others would see this as well?
One thing I always do is I do a little journal, like just give people an open journal so that they have something that they can process with. I don't usually build in scheduled one-on-one time because as a retreat leader, there's so much you've got going on. You're holding space the entire time and you don't want to fill up your calendar. You need downtime too.
Yeah.
Right? You really do. So, but if somebody needs time, I tell people, look, if there's anything you need to discuss or, there's a challenge you've got, please come to me, right? My door is open. So I let them know that. And a lot of times it's really powerful processing it as a group. And for me, it works out really well because we do a formal gathering, usually at the end of the day. I'll lead a meditation or a group energy healing session. And we let people process and share. And we have a lot of informal time on the boat. We're out on the boat most of the day. We're hanging out. We're playing together. We're swimming together. We're observing together. We're available. I may teach some informal lessons that just come up and we can just have a conversation, right? Or we can be silent watching the waves.
Something about that, again, space, space to
Yeah.
be. The task and action is good, but often the greatest conversations happen on the bus to get to the event or on the
Exactly.
way home. It's that space where there's enough structure that you give yourself permission to be there, but it's not
Yeah.
forced. I appreciate that. I've also really appreciated this conversation. And for those that are intrigued, curious, or would like to know more or to connect with you, how can people find you?
Sure. It's pretty simple. I'm out there on the web, whalewisdomretreats.com. Super easy to find me. So come to whalewisdomretreats.com. There's a free gift there. Look at all the retreats, look at the wisdom. My contact info is there.
Well, thank you very much, Anne, for sharing all these insights about, and certainly about whales. I didn't know about whales that they create their own abundance, which is really cool and really a really nice lesson to know. So thank you very much for sharing this. Everybody else, thank you very much for listening in, and we'll see you in the next episode. Take care. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to The Coaching Edge. Until next time, keep coaching and keep growing.